Scream 2022, the fifth film in the series, is now out in theaters, bringing together several generations of Ghostface victims. So today I'm going to rank all 5 Scream movies in existence from the worst to the best. Now, before I properly get started with my ranking of the Scream movies today, I want to know how you rank them, so drop your rankings down in the comments below and start the conversation, because that's always the most important part. And if you like movies and TV, this is the place to be, so consider clicking that subscribe button if you enjoy what you see here today. The point of this video is not to talk spoilers for every film, but I will be talking freely about them, so you might want to stay away if you want to go completely clean for Scream 5. I will maybe mention some plot points or certain character motivations that you don't want to know about. So without any further ado, obviously no honorable mentions for this kind of video. Let's get started. Scream 3 starts us off in last place. This is easily the Scream movie that feels the most off. Everything just feels like it doesn't work slightly. Wes Craven is back, but the writer Kevin Williamson couldn't come back for this one. And so they went with another writer that I think doesn't really understand the little nuances of what makes this franchise work. Because the meta references are there, but they don't feel clever. They feel like they're just there as a staple, as a box to tick off in these kinds of movies. Everything just feels very staged, and there's a part of me that thinks it's on purpose because the film is set in Hollywood and whatnot, and the characters are present in Hollywood, but the performances, the dialogue, the little character interactions that we get in here, again, just feel slightly off. It feels very much Scream light. It feels very much Wes Craven light. It doesn't even feel like he's that inspired in directing this one. I will say this, I don't think it's a horrible film. I will say that the Scream, even though it was never my franchise personally, they don't have a single film that I think it's outright bad and horrible. Even this one, Scream 3, very watchable. I just don't think it stands out that much. I think everyone is legit trying, and there are some cool scenes. The opening sequence with Cotton Weary and his girlfriend is really cool. I like the concept of the plan of the killer killing the cast members of another Stab movie by the order they were going to die in the film. Also, I like the ending, how he brings Sidney to this place where she looks at the door that is opening up, and we have the classic ranging of the door, the classic sound that is supposed to be creepy, but she's over it. She's overcome her fear and her history, and she's surpassed that fear. I think it's a really cool point to end the original trilogy on, but I really don't like the reveal of it being Sidney's long-lost brother. I think that opens up a ton of holes with the legacy, no pun intended, of the Scream franchise. And whenever we have the killer reveal, it's always impactful. It always hits the characters on an emotional level. In this one, it doesn't, because Sidney did not know who this person was. She had never met the guy before the reveal. Knowing or not knowing that he was her brother, she just hadn't interacted with this man at all. So the reveal doesn't really work. The reveal has absolutely no impact on a narrative or on an emotional level. So this one is one that, again, just feels very competent, but it doesn't really add anything of value to the franchise. Scream 2 brings us into number 4, and I like this one as an extension of what happened in the original. And being in college, that just rings true to me. I've always appreciated more of the college comedies or college horror movies more than I ever did, usually, for the most part at least, the high school stuff in movies. And so this one appeals to me. This is one that I also like much more the ideas and the concepts rather than the proper execution. It's better than Scream 3 in every way, where Williamson and Craven were going full throttle on this. This has that vibe, that cleverness, that intelligence of the original movie, and continues the arcs of the characters in very interesting ways, where Dewey now sees Sydney as his younger sister because he lost his actual sister in the first one. The damage that Gale Weathers writing the book has generated and how Dewey was affected by it, we are allowed to see a more human side of Gale. So on a character level, this film really works and really surprised me. The story itself, how it comes together with the killer reveal and whatnot, with it being Billy's mom who is back, who, again, I'm going to say this a lot, but I like the idea of it. I think the film loses a ton of momentum once the reveal is there, because her motivation is revenge. She came back from having disappeared and from having gone away to avenge her son. The way she goes around acting out her revenge doesn't make a whole ton of sense. If she was in doing this for revenge to just kill Sydney because Sydney killed her son, it's just a huge roundabout way to get that done. So it makes for some entertaining stuff. It makes for a clever film that has most of the qualities character-wise of the first film, but the story just starts to have a few more holes that I would like to see. And so this one is an enjoyable time. It just goes slightly down from the original. Again, it works on a character level very strongly so, but the story itself just needed to iron out a few of the kinks. At number 3, we have Scream 4. Talk about a surprise, where this film should have never been as good as it is, because for the longest time, this was actually my favorite sequel. So there's a little tease for the top 2 movies on this list. This one just does everything like a long-ranging sequel should do, where it brings back the characters years later and we see how the experiences of life have affected them and how different the dynamics are. Where Sydney starts off in this place where she's overcome the fear of Ghostface after Scream 3, and Dewey and Gale are married and they've established this life in Woodsboro, where comparatively to the other films, we also see other characters look at them in very different ways. Sydney is herself now this kind of guardian throughout the film for her cousin. And then the killer reveal is really cool, where it was her cousin all along because she was tired of living in the shadow of the big legend that is Sidney Prescott. I also really like how Sydney in this is an absolute badass. She just throws herself at Ghostface, which was, again, glad they didn't go back on that arc that she went through in the original trilogy, and she's just not afraid of this dude. But the reveal is really cool as the film plays with these tropes of a collection of characters in high school. We have the film nerds and we have the final girl and whatnot, but the final girl, turns out she was the killer all along. And I like the motivation. I find it compelling. Biggest issue with this one is really how flat it looks. Wes Craven went to the look of this film on purpose to be very different for what a reboot of a horror franchise should be. But I don't think it works. It just is not a pleasing film to look at. Some of the kills are cool. I don't think Scream actually has a lot of lame kills. Scream as a whole, even Scream 3, which is the weakest one, they all have really cool kills. So as a franchise, that makes it really solid. I feel like as soon as we get the identity of the killers, which is a nice mirroring of the first film, and we'll get to that again when we talk about number 5. This is the one where as soon as the killers get revealed, it's a cool reveal. It's a good moment that makes you look back on the film until then in interesting ways. But this is the one where I feel it loses the most momentum as soon as the killer is revealed. Because even in 3, it's a lame reveal because it has absolutely no effect. But then we continue to have this cool fight with all these twists that they were wearing the vest and whatnot, and Sydney keeps hiding away. In this one, it just feels like they win, but you don't believe they're gonna win whatsoever. And then we still have an elongated scene in the hospital, and so it just loses a bit of momentum of that pacing that the film was building up to a crescendo. And then there's this little extra thing. So again, like the reveal, like those moments, and like how ruthless Jill is in killing her ex and dating this new guy, but killing him as well. But this is the one where the third act really flattens down on the excitement of the film. So that's my biggest issue with this one. The new Scream, 2022's Scream, the fifth film, comes in second place, and this is just such a clever film where it raises up a middle finger at toxic fandom, at the fandom menace, as we usually call it. But it's also clever enough to acknowledge it as very dangerous. And so I like how this new one plays with that level of gravitas. Because yes, it's trying to say something, and it says it, but it also acknowledges the other side of the coin. It's not just, haha, fuck you, it's fuck you, but actually, people who are watching this film, we should be careful with these people. The sharp wit of this one is just on a whole nother level, where I might slightly prefer the sense of humor in this one to the original, just because it's humor I grew up with and I relate to the most, being on this age of the internet and reboots and sequels. But it's also sharp wit and clever humor that doesn't work without the history of the original. And so this one has such a great balance of that humor, but the history that this entire film and these characters carry with it. The killing of Dewey feels brutal. It feels wrong, but in the best ways possible, where this shouldn't be happening. And it's so sad for the characters, and what I talked about in my non-spoiler review, which is right up here in case you want to check it out. The interactions of Sidney and Gale and Dewey with the new characters, with Melissa Barrera and Jenny Ortega and Jack Quaid and everyone, is you feel that weight, where these characters clearly are not here to save them, to impose themselves on these new characters, because they're clearly taking the lead, these new kids. We should listen out to these people who have been through all these experiences and now have a different understanding of all the movie tropes and what Ghostface could want. And so that really works for this film. What draws this one back from being number one, I talked about as well, is that the murder mystery aspect of Scream, which I always think is interesting. In this one, it didn't really work, because you develop all these characters to be descendants of some members of the original casts. And then you have two sore thumbs standing out because they're not related to anyone. And so you start suspecting of the boyfriend and the best friend, and obviously it was them all along. I love the two killers once again, and I love the motivation. Again, it plays into that fact of the film is giving you a middle finger, a deserved middle finger, but also works as a cautionary tale, and I really like that. The original Scream comes in at number one. This is the standard bearer. This is the blueprint. This is not only the one that did it first, more importantly, and why it makes number one is because it is the one that did it better. This is the one that established Sidney Prescott as the most badass of the final girls. Before they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis and made her the Sarah Connor of Halloween, Sidney Prescott was from the beginning a real badass. She's vulnerable, but she's smart. She has a tragic backstory, but she's very human, with all these faults and qualities that make her stand out. She's not unnecessarily stupid. She's maybe naive at points. She's maybe oblivious to certain things. But this is such a strong character for a horror franchise. A horror franchise that has always stood out for its balance of humor and horror and brutality and cleverness. The sharp wit, the intelligent commentary on franchising and horror as a genre. It is all here, the blueprint for all the films that came after, and still the one that did it the best is this one, where it established all these cliched characters in this group of high school students, but then it twists all these cliches onto themselves while giving an interesting analysis. Scream as a franchise has stood the test of time because every film just feeds onto the next naturally, but this is the one that most feeds into all of them. This is the one that started history, and this is the one that executed its premise and opened the doors for us to still be talking about one of the most iconic killers in horror to this day. And so without any further ado, from the kills to the characters to the tropes to the winks to the audience, Scream 1996 comes in at number 1. And so those are my thoughts on the Scream movies. That's my ranking of the Scream franchise. What did you think about it? Let me know anything and everything down there in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my members Stu and Bruno for making this video possible. There's a link in the description for you to see if you want to become a member and check out the perks and the different tiers. I hope to see you there. Thank you so much once more for watching, and go check out my review of this new Scream movie. No spoilers on that one, but I hope to see you in there, and I hope to see you in any other video I upload very soon. And so until the next one, love each other and love the movies.